me after London. If you find time, we can run one. Talk about some things we can undo. You just in the pen, I can find you. 6'1" on the money, 9'2". You just say the word and I run through. 2 texts, no reply, that's when I knew. Yeah.
What's going on, everybody? Hope every one of y'all are having a blessed day today. As requested by many of you, we are starting a podcast. So really what the podcast is going to be about is just baseball-related content. So events happening in the league, like trades, big games, debuts, records, movement amongst, minor league levels, high, low A ball, just stuff like that. Just really kind of just weekly updates, keeping, everybody kind of in the loop, just what's going on. But today, what we're going to be honing in on is recently the MLB concluded the MLB draft. So what we're going to be focusing on today is specifically the first round of the draft, just kind of highlighting a couple guys that I think are going to be, guys that go into that organization and just make big impacts. I think we have 12 guys that we're going to be going over today, just kind of breaking down the organization that they're going into, the players themselves, what I think is going to be most beneficial for that player in that organization, why I think that organization probably chose that player, going into, what some organizations might have done better, what some organizations did good. So that's kind of what we're going to be going over today, just breaking down the first round of the draft, highlighting a couple of guys. But, so let's hop into it. Starting off hot, we have none other than Paul Skeens. If you've been keeping up with college baseball at all recently, you have heard the name at some point, or you know exactly what I'm talking about. Skeens obviously has been an absolute dude on the bump this year for LSU. Senior year, tallied 209 strikeouts, 20 walks, and 19 starts. Skeens, I think he shows a lot of potential. If you've watched his game, he runs up the fastball 101, 102 for just about the whole game. He sits, upper 90s. He showcases a lot of just live to that fastball, and I think that that's going to be something that he relies on as he goes throughout his pro career. Not to mention, he has arguably the best pitch in college baseball, his slider. He had the ability to buckle guys with the fastball 101 at the hands and then just drop a slider off the plate. There's not a lot of guys that at the college level could touch it, and I think at the pro level that are going to be able to touch it. And I think that the Pirates made the right choice, kind of that toss-up between, Cruz and Skeens. I think they made the right decision going with Skeens, as if you look at Pittsburgh's bullpen, they're kind of, a little shallow right now, and I think that they're going to be in a spot to really try to get Skeens up there and make that call as quick as they can. I believe that Skeens, he has that ability and that potential to go up to the big leagues and really just be that guy and make that impact. I think he has enough, life to the fastball and enough movement on the slider to really, be successful at that level. So I think that Pittsburgh is really going to be looking to have Skeens, jump in and really be that guy for that organization. Next up, we have his partner in crime, Dylan Cruz. Now, Cruz, if you've watched college baseball, if you watched LSU in general, you know that their roster was just loaded with talent. You got the 1-1 and then the 1-2 straight from LSU. So I think that, if you look at that roster, you're going to have guys, especially in the near future, going really high in that first round. But Cruz, obviously, he shows a lot of just raw talent. Hit 426 at LSU his senior year. He was 110 for 258 with 18 homers and 70 RBIs. Those are just monster numbers. I think that if you look at Cruz and you look at the way that he plays, you haven't seen a guy this toolsy in the outfield in a very long time. He covers a lot of ground. He's got a plus arm. Obviously, he swings it really, really well. He won the Golden Spike. I think it really wasn't close between, who was going to win it other than maybe Skeens. Like I said, their roster was just loaded with talent. But if you look at the way Cruz plays, I think the Nationals made a really good choice with picking Cruz, with the 1-2. I think that their infield, as of now, is pretty solid. But I think that in the near future, they're going to look, like I talked about with Skeens, they're going to look to have Cruz kind of come in quick and climb that ladder and be, a franchise guy that they're going to want to bring in really, really quick in that organization. So I think that, Cruz, he has that potential. Obviously, he shows, really, really good, footwork in the outfield. Obviously, he flows really well. The swing plays. One thing the one thing that sticks out to me about Cruz, and what I really, really like, is his approach at the plate. He never, if you watch him play, the reason he has such a high batting average and a high ball and play percentage is because he's not scared to use the whole field. As you're seeing right now, hitting an opposite field home run, like those types of players are the guys that go into that next level and they excel because they use the whole field with power to both sides. Coming up next, we have the social media phenom Max Clark. Now, Max was selected third overall by the Detroit Tigers. If you've watched Max play, you obviously know he's number one player in his class. He was the Gatorade Player of the Year for his state of Indiana, Gatorade National Player of the Year, and then the Gatorade Male Athlete of the Year. So obviously, Max is a very decorated player. Off the field, obviously he has that social media presence on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. He's all over the place. I think that's one of the reasons is that he's become, the star of, high school baseball is because of his social media presence. He's been able to market himself very, very well, and I think that plays into a large factor of why he's been so successful off the field. Now, as far as on the field, obviously he can play. Like I said, number one player in his class. He was a number one high school prospect selected in this year's draft. Max, he slugged a .551 average with 119 hits, 95 RBIs in his senior year, which is just, it's pretty solid senior year. But like I said, Max, he's obviously super, super talented. Swing plays really, really well from the left side. He flies. He's got an absolute hose from the outfield. Even, got the chance to showcase his arm on the mound, topping at 97. As not a primary pitcher, that's pretty solid. I think that, with him going into the Detroit organization, I think he's again going to be a guy that he'll spend a couple years in the minors and he'll, slowly climb that ladder. But I think he'll be a guy that someday will make his debut, and he will be a guy that kind of, if you look at certain players, like I compare his game to Bryce Harper. I think that they play very similar, kind of had the same path in a way, and I think that they're going to be, pretty similar career paths, looking to climb that ladder and make an impact in that organization pretty quick. Next, we have the slugging outfielder from Florida, Wyatt Langford. Now, Langford was selected with the 4th overall pick to the Texas Rangers. I actually think this is a perfect fit for Langford as far as just his kind of play style. Obviously, defensively, obviously you would say he's above average. He's a Power 5 SEC outfielder. But as far as, guys that were selected in the draft, I think he falls kind of under the umbrella of just the average outfielder. But at the plate, dude he slugs, right? He batted .373, tallied 88 hits, and hit a whopping 28 home runs his senior year at Florida. I think, if you're watching these videos, you see that he just has a bunch of raw power. His swing plays really, really well. Now, granted, as he goes into his pro career, that can change. But as far as what we've seen from him his last year at Florida, his swing plays, right? He's got an absolute cannon from the outfield. I think if he picks up speed, picks up ball off bat a little bit better, he can, really turn into a guy that is going to be that dude for the Rangers. I think if you look at, just the way that he plays, I think that you're going to see that he has a lot of potential to be, really, really successful. I think if you look at him, I compare his game kind of to Kyle Tucker. Obviously, he's not a lefty. Their swings aren't exactly the same, but if you look at Kyle Tucker, he has a lot of just raw power. His swing doesn't exude a lot of force or a lot of like he's trying to just muscle up the baseball. It's smooth, it's compact, it's easy power. I think that that's something Langford possesses. And then as far as their defensive abilities in the outfield, I think they play pretty similar. If you look at Tucker, he's not the fastest. He doesn't have the strongest arm, but he just makes plays. And he's got obviously IQ's off the charts. And I think that Langford, if you look at the way that they both played the game, you'll find a lot of similarities. So I think that, the Rangers are really going to look to have him, climb that ladder and really try to progress throughout the farm system. And I think that Langford definitely shows the capabilities to be, a really successful prospect for them. Next on our list, we have Walker Jenkins. Walker was selected as the 5th overall pick to the Twins. Walker, he obviously, if you're looking at the video now, dude just swings it really, really well. Jenkins in his senior year batted .487, tallied 74 hits and 78 runs scored. So obviously this guy is an offensive threat. I don't think he pitched a little bit for his high school team, pitched a little bit in showcase ball. He ran it up to I think about 90, 91. But I don't think Jenkins is going to be a guy that maybe go in looking for a two-way spot. I think he's strictly going to be more dominant on the offensive side of the ball. But I think if you look at Jenkins' tool set and his ability, I think he's going to be a guy that will go in and he'll make some strides. Obviously, his swing plays really well. He flows to the ball. He just kind of has that natural IQ and natural ability to just play the game really well. And I think he'll have a really successful career. Next on our list, we have probably my favorite player selected in the first round of this draft, Jacob Wilson. He went as the 6th overall pick to the Athletics. He came, from GCU, which not a powerhouse school by any means, but they had a pretty successful season. Wilson, in his year with GCU, batted .361, 155 RBIs, and 22 home runs. So needless to say, he had a pretty successful year. But one of the reasons that I like Wilson so much is just the way he plays the game. You're not going to find a lot of guys that just put their head down and just grind like he does. I think that offensively, he's got one of the best swings in the draft. I think, he showcases a lot of speed, and as far as in the infield, he simply just makes plays, right? He's one of those guys that he's going to make the routine plays, and then when you need him to, he's going to make the play that's, the diving play or the sliding play, or, he's going to gun a guy out from a ball deep in the 6 hole. So I think that that's one of the things that makes him so special, is that as far as the infield goes, he just makes plays, and that goes a long way. And then offensively, like I said, he swings it really well. As you can see in these videos, he's gap-to-gap power. Just sprays the ball all over the yard, and then also he runs pretty well. But like I said, I think Jacob, he's going to be very successful in his career if he continues on his path just like he finished at GCU. I think he's going to be a guy that excels through the ladder system pretty quickly. I think that if you look at his career stats at GCU, you look at his progression over the years, you're going to see a guy that just puts his heads down and works. And I think if he carries that over, he'll be very successful. Next on our list, we have the speed demon, Enrique Bradfield from Vanderbilt. He was selected with the 17th overall pick to the Baltimore Orioles. Enrique, if you've watched him play at Vandy the last couple of years, you know that, like I said with Wilson about making plays, Enrique Bradfield just straight up makes plays. Dude absolutely flies all over the yard, and that's what I think is going to be his real strength in his game. He's a big slap guy, gap to gap, and just flies around the bases. Occasionally put a ball out, but he's going to live, in those gaps down the line. That's where he's going to make a lot of his money. It's just being that dude that just flies around the bases, doesn't get out, runs a hard 90. Not to mention in the outfield, I look at him, I compare his game a lot to Jackie Bradley Jr. Just the way that they play the game in the outfield, it's a no-fly zone. They just straight up make plays everywhere. I think Enrique is definitely going to be a guy that goes in, and he'll be a big name here in the future. Next up on our list, we have Tommy Troy. Troy was a really, really solid player for Stanford this year. He was drafted with the 12th overall pick to the Diamondbacks. And I think that the Diamondbacks had an absolute steal with this pick. In my opinion, I think Tommy Troy should have gone a little bit higher in this first round. But, I guess other organizations saw something different. But I think that Troy is definitely kind of a diamond in the rough. Obviously, he plays really well. Obviously, you can look at these videos and see that he's just his swing is just, I mean, powerful. He has balls fly off the bat like they don't with other guys. I mean, you watch the way he swings. It's controlled violence. There's not a lot of guys that do it as well as he does. He makes his swing look really, really simple, but at the same time, he does a lot of damage. In his senior year with Stanford, he hit .394, tallied 98 hits with 17 home runs. Not to mention, he can hit the crap out of the baseball, but he can also fly around the bases. With all those hitting numbers that I mentioned, he also had 17 stolen bases, so he's pretty quick on the base pass. I think that Troy is definitely going to be a guy that he'll probably end up staying at second base. I don't think, he's got a solid arm. I don't think he'll have a plus arm at the next level, especially, going into the Diamondbacks organization. I think they're going to try to keep him on the right side of the infield. But I think that Troy definitely has a lot of potential and a lot of upside on the offensive side of the ball, and I'm really excited to see what he does, because, I mean, if you look at his numbers at Stanford and the way that he just plays the game, I mean, he's an extra base hits machine. He's definitely a guy that just lives gap to gap, and then eventually he'll, get under and hit it out of the yard. So I think that Troy is definitely a guy that they're going to look to, again, climb that ladder really quick and be a big impact guy in the organization. Next up on our list, we have one of the most electric right-handed pitchers in college baseball, Hurston Waldrop. He was selected with the 24th overall pick to the Atlanta Braves. Hurston, he had a 4.16 ERA his senior year at Florida, which is not mind-blowing by any means. But he had a pretty good record. He went 10-3, and he tallied 156 strikeouts. So if you look at these videos that are playing right now, you'll see that he lives on his off-speed. Hurston's got one of the best changeups in college baseball. I think that if he can transfer that to the next level, he'll be very successful. He's got a really good mix of pitches, and I like the way he just controls the mound in general. He runs up the fastball, probably, he sits 95 plus from the right side. But at the same time, like I said earlier, he commands the zone with, his changeup that just drops off the table, and then he's got a slider that is, really solid. He locates it really well, like you see there, 0-2 count, just drops it off the plate right there. But I think Hurston definitely has potential to be successful at the next level. I think, the Braves bullpen is pretty solid right now, but I think that once he goes through that system, they'll definitely have him, looking to be a guy that comes in for solid innings and just gets that swing and miss. If you look at his numbers, he has a really high swing and miss rate, and that's why I think he's been very successful with this year at Florida, and I'm excited to see what he does in the future. Next up on our list, we have one of arguably the best infielders coming out of high school in this year's draft, Arhu Namala. He was selected with the 20th overall pick going to the Blue Jays. I think if you look at these videos of Namala, he's got really good hands, really good feet. The glove just plays really well. Not to mention he has an absolute cannon across the infield. But Namala in his senior year tallied .479, 35 hits and 6 home runs. I think that if you look at the way he plays the game, I compare him a lot to Bo Bichette, just as far as infield. I think that there's not a lot of guys that you look at and you're just like, dang, like he gets it, right? Obviously, if you look at these videos, bat speed off the charts, he swings it really well. But I think one of the things that really sticks out to me, and the reason I think he was drafted so high in this first round, was the fact that you look at him in the field and there's just something different about him, with his glove, his feet, his hands. There's just not a lot of guys at his age, especially, doing those things. Obviously, the swing plays really well. You're seeing he's a good line drive, gap-to-gap guy, and he'll eventually, get under it and elevate the ball out of the ballpark. But I think that you look at just the way he plays the game, and there's just something different about it. And so I'm excited to see what he does in the Blue Jays organization. I think it's a great fit for him. And I think that their minor league affiliates are really good at farming, especially infielders. So I think that he's in a really, really good spot, and I'm excited to see what he does in the future. Next up on our list, we have arguably the best catcher in college baseball coming from the University of Virginia, Kyle Teal. he was selected with the 14th overall pick going to the Red Sox. I think that, if you look at the way Kyle plays the game, there's absolutely not a lot of guys that are as locked down defensively as he is. You look at just the way he plays, the toughness, the grit, the energy that he brings to the table. There's not a lot of guys that do that. Not to mention he backs it up with the numbers. Kyle batted .407, tallied 105 hits and 13 home runs. So if you look at his season offensively, he's off the charts, right? Catching, defensively, like I said, I think he's one of the best catchers in the draft this year because he plays well both sides of the ball. You're going to have guys, if you look at pro ball levels, they might be just a wall behind the dish and they can't hit the flat side of a barn. Or you're going to have guys, their framing rate is terrible, but hey, they swing it well. If you look at, the way Kyle plays the game, he contributes on both sides of the ball, right? Like I said earlier, he brings energy. He brings, just that fire. If you look at the way he plays, I compare him a lot to JT Realmuto with the Phillies. I think that they play very similar, and I think that's why he's going to be really successful in the future. Last on our list here, we have arguably one of my favorite players in the draft this year. I think that, Bryce Matthews from Nebraska, absolutely one of the most slept-on players in this year's draft. Like I said, still a first-rounder. He went 20th overall to the Astros. I think Matthews should have been easily a top 15 pick. If you look at, his numbers this year, 359, 74 hits, and 20 homers. Matthew, he flies around the bases. Just an offensive onslaught this year for Nebraska. If you look at, his numbers offensively and defensively, he contributes both sides of the ball. He makes plays defensively that you're not going to see guys make. He's a plus arm. His glove is just off the charts. I think that he's going to look to take all these attributes to the next level and be very, very successful. All right, so that will wrap up the video / podcast, whatever you want to call it, for the day. But yeah, I really enjoyed doing this. Just getting to look at these guys selected in this year's draft, getting to kind of dive into their play styles and look at the organizations they're going into. Getting to see how they're gonna, blossom and develop from the high school to the college level, and see how they progress and grow throughout their pro career. I think that it's really cool to get to kind of see that. And we got to witness, a lot of guys at their high school and college levels be very successful. And so it'll be interesting and exciting to see how they take that skills and their assets to the next level, and see how they turn out. So I'm excited. I had a lot of fun with it. If you guys want me to talk about other things, events in the major leagues, let me know. I'm definitely going to try to do this at least once a week if I can. So let me know if you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, if you have things that you want me to talk about or go over, drop them down in the comments. Let me know, and I will absolutely go over it. But yeah, this will wrap up the first podcast / video. So if you guys enjoyed it, drop a like, leave a comment. Make sure if you're not subscribed, you subscribe. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.